and we just want to walk you through some interesting numbers that did come out of the SME Performance Index, which is conducted by Wild International. And join me on our Super World right now, and let's take a look at some of the interesting statistics. Well, 68% of respondents that did take part in this research indicated that they didn't access finance from third-party institutions, while 32% were able to access. Quite a big disparity there, 68%. Well, let's take a look at the next slide, where we'll be able to just see another interesting aspect that did come up, is that where do most of the SMEs get their source of funding? Well, 57% of them say their businesses, they actually finance their businesses through business profits. This involves the money you've made out of your operations, whereas 25% are saying they are getting financing from savings, 12% from banks, with other sources sharing 6%. Well, let's look at the next one, and this touches on really the access to new local or export markets during the year, and 55% of all the respondents indicated that they didn't manage to access new markets, either local or export, while 45% accessed new markets. Well, let's take a look at the final slide, where we'll be able to see the issues that touch on the government policies and programs that had a positive impact on the SME businesses. While some of the top 5 included the enactment of the Companies Act 2015, the Government Digital Services, the AGPO one-stop border clearing, and improved infrastructure. That's one of the key issues. The next one touches on political instability, also played a big part for the SMEs, which came across, of course, during the long election period, and interest rate cap, taxation, corruption, and too many public holidays did also have a big impact on the SMEs. Well, we want to get more updates from this, and we are joined by the research director at Wild International, and that is Victor Otieno, who will be helping us make sense of some of these interesting numbers. Many thanks, Victor, for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
And quite startling statistics about the SMEs. Is this a death knell of sorts for people who are running small businesses?
Not quite. We all know that the SME sector is a critical cog in the national in our national economy. We know that according to a recent CBK report, they constitute 98% of all registered business in Kenya. They contribute 3% of GDP and employ 30% of the entire population. So we cannot wish away SMEs in whatever respect. Mm-hmm. So far, we know that there are very little, or there is no parameter of measuring the performance of SMEs. We don't know how they are. We don't know the situation. It's an election year. We are not sure what happened to them. Mm-hmm. We've seen listed companies issuing profit warnings, so at least they can be measured based on the NSE index. So far, SMEs, there is no credible measurement tool that is currently being used to measure any changes taking place in the sector. Mm-hmm. That's basically why we decided to do the index, to find out what is really happening in the SME sector. All right. Yeah.
And Victor, picking off from those statistics, 62% are saying they could not access capital. How big a challenge is this for the banks, which have been saying people are not coming for loans, and on the flip side, SMEs are saying we are being locked out? So, who's saying the truth?
I think the question should be banks are businesses by nature, so they will only lend to parties or companies that would give them profits, which is okay. Yeah, SMEs need money, but I think for us, again, based on our research, is they are going to the banks too early. I'll give you an example. Someone who has an idea or a concept of a business, if they were to approach a bank for financing, they would be too risky. So a bank at that stage might not be the best option for them to access finance. Even if they are registered and what we call startups or early stage companies, going to a bank, again, is not probably the best option. Interesting enough, from our research, we found that moving from 2016 coming to 2017, knowing that it was going to be an election year, some of the SMEs put aside some of the profits that they made in 2016, which they used to finance the operations in 2017. Those probably who did not make any profits are the ones who actually struggled. Yes.
And does this mean that, looking at still the numbers, 25% are financing their businesses through savings?
Yes.
Is this a good place to be, or this can be further rejigged?
I think having retained earnings or profits to finance your business is good because it's riskless. Because there is no interest charged. It's just your money that you're using to finance your business. But it can only help you to grow so much. Yeah, that's why you need an external financial institution to be able to inject more financing to enable you to grow your product offering and probably to grow regional.
And as we come to the tail end of the interview, perhaps what are some of the recommendations that the index does offer when it comes to resuscitating life into the SMEs?
Probably on the 26th of January, we are going to have a more in-depth analysis of this research. But what we are calling for in terms of for all industry sector players is for us to come on one table and probably be able to project what is called an attractor state, which is an ideal state for the SME sector. And to see how best we can work together with reducing redundancy and everything to be able to achieve or to move the SME agenda forward. If you look at one of the tools that we use is called the ANDE diagnostic tool, is able to identify critical factors that matter to SMEs: access to finance, access to markets, infrastructure, policy. At this stage, everyone is trying to address those issues separately, but what we recommend is for industry stakeholders to sit down and find an aggregated way of addressing the needs of SMEs.
All right.
Yes.
Many thanks, Victor, for that breaking down of the numbers. That is Victor Otieno, the head of research at Wild International, and we are just breaking down the numbers from the SME Performance Index that was actually released late December. Well, at that juncture, that's where we want to wrap up the show with a look at the Twitter poll question.